to T-Town. I hope you're doing well.
Well, Marquise, you getting on him, and now the Astros just tied my Indians here, so 1-1 in this one. But obviously, the Indians got a big hole to dig anyway, and just starts with trying to get one today. But yes, I'm definitely previewing all the Week 7 content and looking into some Alabama things as we speak.
Bill, I want to ask you, and don't feel constricted to go Alabama. What has been the biggest takeaway in this first, because we're at the midpoint now, 6 weeks in? What has been the biggest number one storyline in college football, in your opinion?
I think it's the one to come, and that's what I wrote about last week, and you were kind enough to share. I think between what's going on with Alabama and Tua Tagovailoa, and I remember getting ripped on in the summer by some people for saying Tua will be in New York City. Now the question is anybody going to compete with Tua in New York City? And I think the one guy that will is Ohio State's Dwayne Haskins. I think Ohio State and Alabama are on a crash course. I know Georgia, Clemson, and a few others will have something to say about that. But to me, those are the most talented teams in the country, and those are the two teams with the most efficient quarterbacks in the country.
Well, when you look at Tua Tagovailoa from a national perspective, how much do you think the Heisman, because you brought it up, the Heisman conversation, that he's not playing late in the games impacts that Heisman decision? Because you know how some voters will do it. They'll literally look at stats and they'll get into comparison. And if you're not playing, only 3/4 of the game and sometimes not even that much, then those numbers are going to be a little bit off.
Well, to me, the stats almost tell the story in a different way, though. Like, we're halfway through the season, he hasn't thrown a pass in the fourth quarter. We're halfway through the season, he hasn't thrown an interception. We're halfway through the season, and Alabama averages 56 points per game, is beating teams by 40. And to me, the most devastating play in college football right now isn't a sweep or an option or a bubble screen. It's Tua Tagovailoa deep to Jerry Jeudy, right? I mean, that's an unstoppable play. And the way they're throwing haymakers, I think it's pretty clear that, he's the front runner in my eyes. But I do think on a different level, Ohio State and Haskins, he has the stats, and he's changed their offense too. So, to me, again, we can talk about the defenses on those teams if you want, but it's almost like they're scoring so many points that, you might score some too, but they're not going to score as many as us.
Bill, let me ask you on the flip side of that. What has been the biggest disappointment in college football so far?
Well, I think there are a couple teams. I think you look at some teams that have two. Auburn's been bad, and I'm not just saying it because I'm on your show. I mean, the fact that they've had 2 losses and they won the opener. Like, we all pointed to that opener as their go-to game, and then they lose 2 games in disappointing fashion the way they did. I think Michigan State up here has been disappointing. They were a team we thought might compete for the Big Ten championship, and they might be laying 3 losses. But everything in between, I think the 2 schools that are in between are LSU, who they did lose, but I think they've been better than people would have expected, and I think Michigan's better than people expected. You guys down there in the South only tweet about Jim Harbaugh when he loses. Well, he hadn't lost in about 5 weeks, and they finally got another big game coming.
All right, so let's go back to Auburn because they are in our state. I mean, this looks like a team that's going to lose a lot more games. I mean, their schedule is not going to be setting up for them at the back end of the season with an offensive-minded head coach with so little offensive production. I mean, this team looks like a disaster.
And they have not. It's weird. It really is weird knowing you knew they had all that experience at receiver coming back. You knew they had a quarterback that led them to the SEC West Championship last year and beat Alabama coming back. You knew their defensive front was pretty good. And then, like I said, they beat Washington. So the fact that they lose LSU the way they did, and then last week, it's pretty disjointed on the offensive side of the ball. Now, that's not to say they can't jump up and beat somebody on any given week or throw a scare into Georgia or Alabama or whoever, but I'm almost looking at it the opposite way this week. I'm looking at Tennessee thinking, are the Vols going to hang around in this game for a little bit? And I think coming off a bye week, they might. I don't think Tennessee's going to beat Auburn, but I think they could hang around.
We are talking to Bill Bender, sportingnews.com, sportingnews.com. The best way to connect with Bill is straight up Bill Bender 92. A great way to cover college football, provides a lot of insight into the game. And we're gonna go back to a couple of different things. when you look at hiccups for Alabama, are you buying that LSU, because I know you talked about them a couple of seconds ago, are you buying that they can throw up a hurdle in front of this Crimson Tide team?
LSU, sure. Well, I was going to ask you because I'm actually working on this article now. So the premise of this article I'm working on, and sometimes I collaborate you, so let's just do it on the air. I am doing the game for each of the top 10 undefeated teams that would be the most likely upset, and then the upset you wouldn't see coming. So I couched that with the most likely upset of Alabama to me would be LSU. On the road, typically a tight game. You guys know the math down there. The one you wouldn't see coming, to me, would be Tennessee if they somehow miracle to win down there at Neyland. And I say that because if Mississippi State or Auburn beat Alabama, I think you guys would say, okay, that Mississippi State pushed us last year, Auburn beat us last year. I think Tennessee would be so out of whack. And that's where this month is. I mean, we want to pencil these teams in the playoffs. There will be an unexpected upset or two. I'm not saying Tennessee's going to beat Alabama. I'm saying that would be the upset that you guys just wouldn't see coming on any level.
Well, looking at it from a perspective, Auburn's defense is legit. Okay, I'll give you that. But offense, that's what you've got to calculate when we talk about production, because Tua, as long as he's healthy, he's going to get his yardage. And, we're talking about a guy that, as we talked about, has been limited. LSU is ninth in the SEC out of 14 teams defensively. Everybody talks about how stout of a defensive they are, but I don't think there's enough production. You got a quarterback that really is a half the field guy. You're not going to beat Alabama that way because you're not going to be able to score points that can keep up with Tua. Bill, this is going to sound like a homer in Tuscaloosa, which I am. I don't see a team that can beat this team until the month of December in the SEC title game. And I don't know if that's just me being a big-time homer. I just don't know how I could sit here and make an argument. Drew Lock this weekend, he's going to put up points. I think they'll score a ton, but their defense is not going to stop Alabama. Tennessee, right. No. LSU, no. Mississippi State, no. Auburn, no. It's really the December game. And then you set up the question, if you have this marvelous season, you go to Atlanta, and you got both teams that are undefeated, and one trips up, are they out of the college football playoffs?
I think there's only – and to your point, yeah. We're looking for upset bids, and we'll be those are the games that we looked at. I honestly believe the only teams that could beat Alabama straight up there's only three.
Okay.
There really are. I think it's Georgia in the SEC championship game. I think we can agree on that. I think it's Clemson because we've seen them do it, and I think it's Ohio State because of their talent. And I know of those three teams, like that article I wrote last week that you retweeted, that got the most response because I have a feeling that's the one the Tide wants the most. So let me give you that. If you had a choice as an Alabama fan, who do you want to play in the championship game? And I think I would be willing to guess that 80 to 90% of you want Ohio State.
It would be. And so you think about the matchup, though, because as we look at the rankings right now, you got, I'm just judging by the AP and the coaches poll. You got Alabama, Georgia 1 and 2, Ohio State at 3 in both, Clemson at 4. So would you do an Alabama Clemson in Dallas and then Georgia Ohio State down in Miami leading into Santa Clara? If that's the way this ends up, well, you're not going to have Alabama and Georgia because that's going to, one of those is going to cancel. I'm just not convinced. And then you got to put Notre Dame, as you wrote about here on sportingnews.com. It's like we're easily I think they got past their toughest test on Saturday with Virginia Tech. So Notre Dame, if they can continue the momentum, they're in, right?
I do, and I think that would mean the loser of Alabama. The Alabama-Georgia game would become a quarterfinal of sorts at that point.
Yeah, it would
Notre Dame
be.
Wins out.
Great point.
And I think Alabama-Notre Dame would end up being 1-4. Clemson-Ohio State rematch from a couple years ago, 2-3. Notre Dame-Alabama would come. I would say this, though, and I know everybody's going to do the math on 2012 with Alabama-Notre Dame. Notre Dame is better than they were in 2012. They've got better quarterback. They've got better players in the trenches. They've got, better coordinated. They're just better. But they're still not on Alabama's level. I really believe it. I just don't think they're there.
All right,
I don't think they have.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Bill.
No, that's all I'm saying is I just don't think they could play Alabama, and that's fine. But I don't see a scenario where I pick the Irish in that game.
All right. Is what Alabama's doing for college football, in your opinion, is it good for the game?
We've had this one before. I don't think it's bad. I think it's good to have a standard. I think they've raised the standard for others. I think people that are, sick of Alabama Clemson and sick of Alabama Ohio State and Georgia, well, I mean, this is what the season is this year, where I do think it's top heavy. I find it captivating in that of those top four teams, and I do believe when we get to the rankings here in a couple weeks, it will be Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson, probably in that order. To me, the fascinating part is seeing who blinks first, who loses first. And, that the middle class of college football is way behind. And I say that, and Auburn and LSU are good teams. They're not on Alabama's level. It's kind of the same thing in the Big Ten. I mean, I think Michigan's a good football team. I don't think Michigan has the talent to beat Ohio State. And if Michigan won the Big Ten, I don't think they could hang with Alabama right now. It's just, this is where we're at. You have these super elite teams at the top. I don't think it's bad for college football because I like seeing the best teams play at the end of the year, and I think we're going to get there.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at Ohio State's schedule. Minnesota, no. Purdue, no. Nebraska, Michigan State, no. Maryland, no. I mean, it really does. It comes down to those final two games when they take on in Columbus, the Wolverines, and then likely Wisconsin, which pretty solid football team. I guess you could see. Well, does Iowa have a chance? No. Wisconsin has a tiebreaker there, so it would be Wisconsin, right?
Well, here's the one thing to watch with that race is Wisconsin does play at Michigan this week and at Penn State later in the year. Iowa's crossover schedule is a little more friendly. So if Iowa can somehow do that, they could end up in Indy. But I do think it'll be, either Ohio State or Michigan versus Wisconsin. And, but Ohio State certainly – they're interesting. They're having kind of the same questions you guys are having down there. Their offense is so good, and they are leaking a little bit on the back end with the defense. But, again, does it matter when you're scoring at the rate they're scoring? I think, the thing of Ohio State and Alabama played, I really do believe this. If those two teams played this year, Alabama would be favored. I think it would possibly be one of the most entertaining championship games we could possibly see because of the storylines as well.
All right, Bill, and before I go to you, I want to get Nick Saban's reaction as well because I want to go back to the article that you published last week, Alabama-Ohio State title game, and I want to get your early thoughts. But before I do that, I want to get Nick Saban because, he would die if he knew that you and I were talking about Alabama-Ohio State. If those two teams match up, who do you like? Let's get Nick Saban's reaction before we get Bill Bender.
So if I sound a little bit pissed, you're right. I am. All right? So, be careful.
All right. Okay. Sorry, Coach. Alabama, Ohio State. Break that one down. If those two teams are lined up, what do you think?
I think it'd be a fun game. I think, the quarterbacks would be fun. I think the coaching matchup would be fun. You'd have, like I said, the storyline of on one side, Nick Saban going for a seventh national championship versus on the other side, Ohio State, after the offseason they had, being in that position. I know Nick Saban doesn't want to hear that, and I understand why, and you want to stay focused from week to week. But at the same time, it's fun to, look ahead and think about what that could be. To me, if that happens, and I will say this no matter who gets mad, if that happens, in my opinion, it would be the coolest thing we've seen in terms of build-up since the USC-Texas game.
It would be a lot of fun. Bill Bender, 92 on the Twitter account. This guy is an awesome follow. It's always fun to be able to catch up with Bill Bender as we stretch outside of the Alabama perspective and get a whole national college football analyst. Bill, as always, thank you for your time. We'll be able to connect hopefully very, very soon. I appreciate you giving us a few minutes of your time here in Tuscaloosa. Let me encourage people, sportingnews.com. Find the college football tab. Click Bill Bender, and you'll look at all the archives and the great insight he provides into the game that we love so much. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, and stop talking so much baseball, you two. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate it.